Greetings from a fishing village on the Atlantic coast. You've tuned in to podcast Portwenn, celebrating the world of Doc Martin unofficially. I'm Chesley Wexler, and we'll be discussing Doc Martin, the medicine, the mayhem, and the marvelous people of Portwenn. Podcast Portwenn is an independent fan production, not affiliated with, endorsed by, or sponsored by Buffalo Pictures, ITV, Fox, or the creators of Doc Martin or Best Medicine. Today's episode features a know-it-all, that is, at least one guest, who has watched every episode of the show, possibly more than once. There's a realistic chance there are spoilers in here. Check the show notes to see where you should be in your own viewing. If you don't want to take the chance of learning something, this episode may not be for you. Today we're joined by Lisa Verni, a licensed clinical social worker who has watched the whole series with her husband. I've asked Lisa to participate in a multi-part podcast series regarding the psychology of Portwenn. We're tentatively dividing the parts into seasons 1 through 3, this episode, seasons 4 through 6. We thought season 7 deserved its own episode, and then seasons 8 through 10. So Lisa, come through, and welcome to the pod. Please say a few words about yourself.
Thank you, Chesla. Well, I'm really excited to be here with you. I think this is going to be a lot of fun to talk about this. I'm a retired psychotherapist. I worked with couples. That was one of my primary focuses. And I really enjoyed that because of the complexity of what happens. I consider relationships to be the playground for learning and for growing and evolving. And a lot of times, what I've seen is that people get together because there's some kind of fit, and of course there's good parts and hard parts about that, but then they have the opportunity to grow through some of those long-standing knots in terms of who they are and their relational functioning. And I really see that going on in this series. Now, you invited me to watch this series a few years back. And of course, you know much more about it and remembered things, being that you're an author. But I did start to rewatch it. And of course, with my therapist's hat on, it's a little bit different. I took a lot of notes and I have some things that I want to say, and then maybe we can talk about it further.
That sounds great. I mean, we've got the basic premise of a show as a doctor with panic attacks, right? So, what's not to
So,
like?
exactly. So, in therapy, a lot of times people will report a first dream. And what I was taught is that in that first dream is sort of the whole thing, the whole arc of what's going to happen in the therapy over time. And the opening sequence of this show kind of tells us, or, the first episode at least, kind of tells us what we're going to find. For example, there's a line that says, "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder." And in the very first episode, Martin is captivated by Louisa, certainly her beauty.
Mhm.
But then he's drawn into her eye and he observes that there's something amiss with her eye, which really flusters her and makes her upset, right? That he's kind of so intrusive and seemingly critical. But I think that there's the beauty and then there's the flaw or the problem in the eye, and whose eye, and who's viewing what, and who's criticizing what, and who's loving what, that this is part of the whole story.
I never thought of it that way. I know that Rob, who was in our second episode, which hasn't aired yet, so you don't have the benefit of having seen that, um, he was also sort of paying attention to like how that unfolds in that very first thing, and that you see this beautiful person, but then he has the capability to sort of shut that out and focus in on a medical diagnosis. So you're taking something of a different tack from the psychology of it, which is it's more of a character thing. Like there's people can be beautiful and people can also have flaws.
And I think that is the learning that goes on in
Hmm.
this series. Again, we'll have to discover that as time goes on, but just in the first 3 seasons, I think we see that starting to happen. The other part is I think that there's a lot of symbolism. Certainly, the village itself is a character in the film, as is the beauty and the scenery and the juxtaposition even of the sort of hard scrabble, if that's the word, you know, what it takes to live in this small village amidst all of this beauty. But both of them are characters, the people of the village and the geography and the place. The fact that we see Martin getting run off the road, and the idea is, will they make room for him? And will he make room for them?
Yeah, I can see where you come with that. That's an interesting perspective because saw, an interview where, this man comes to town where he just doesn't fit in the sense of he's got an enormous car in a place where you want to have like the smallest possible car.
Right,
And he's this enormous man and you need to fit into these tiny little places.
right. And so I think, again, going back to the initial dream or the initial scenes, we have some of these conflicts or opportunities for growth presented to us right away. I think that from my standpoint, since I'm really looking at the relational functioning of it, it's a story about these relationships. That there's the relationship of the village with Martin, as we've just
Uh-huh.
said. There's the relationship between Martin and Louisa. There's certainly the relationship with themselves, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That they are going to grow. And then also there's a few other things. We all love the relationship Martin has with the animals, and knowing that Martin Clunes is such a animal lover is sort of funny, right? That he would have
Yeah.
that he would be able to mess with them and play with them and roll around on
Uh-huh.
the floor with them. But also there's this relationship with the couple in the village. And I think that this is really important. I'm going to say more about this. And both that the couple unites in the village, but also the village is helping the couple. There's all this reciprocity going on, I think, in terms of the relational function. I think the series did an amazing job with this, of how we affect each other and are affected by each other. And of course, there are sometimes I was in grad school and I had this amazing teacher who told us to think about in relationships to look for the similarities, say in a couple, let's take a couple, to look for the similarities in what seems like difference, because that's sometimes where people they think, oh, it's oppositional. When I say, when a couple would come and see me, they're both struggling, unless they really don't want to work on the relationship. They're
Uh-huh.
both struggling. They're both frustrated that the
Yeah.
relationship isn't working. So to sort of pose that to a couple and to say, like, look, you're both in this boat together. No one's winning here.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you said that like the village is helping them come together, that didn't strike me right because I was thinking, other than Aunt Joan, who gives him some encouragement, like, you'd better go for it, Martin, because, Danny Steele's very keen. It seems as if, you know, most of the people are like, Louisa, what the hell's wrong with you? This guy is,
Well, I'm going to explain that. If
good,
I'm
because,
going to
you know,
explain that, because I understand what you're saying. On the surface, it does really seem like he's just a thorn in everyone's side and just get out. But I just wanted to just say one more moment about the similarities and differences. So that's where people are similar, and then to see differences in apparent similarities. Because sometimes we think that we have to be the same, whereas if there's not, and I think over time they learn to see that their differences, that they can tolerate their differences.
hmm
So I just
yeah.
want to put that in there. So I think that in this series, they've really met their match, this couple. Now, let's see what they have in common. They both are in positions of authority, and they're both do-gooders.
Yes, I agree. That's an aspect that I think people get from
Mhm.
Martin. I mean, Louisa, it's more obvious as the headmistress of the school. But in season one, we see him. I mentioned this with Rob. He puts a lot of, he tries to help a lot, right? He
Mhm.
accidentally exposes the relationship between Ross and Lady Braiding, but he tries to help the marriage. He tries to help Al with work and money. He tries to help Bert and Al repair a relationship, and Elaine go to her father's wedding, right? So he does a lot of those things in season 1, and then we see a continuous theme where he just wants people to be healthy. Like, follow my advice. What
But
is wrong with you people?
so does she.
Yes.
Everything you just said, like,
Mhm.
you're confirming what you said, that so does she. And
Mhm.
they both have a way, given their position of authority, they're sort of allowed to do this, but that they butt in a lot to what's
Yes.
going on, and they take liberties around them. So I think that that's going back to the similarities and differences. That's something that's appealing. They recognize this in each other and these values. They both have a high moral ground.
Mhm. Agreed.
They're also, however, and it may not seem this way on the surface, but they both have this way of approach and avoid. And they're both easily hurt or stung.
Trying to think of yes, but I
You may not perceive that as much with Martin, but he's maybe not hurt but stung. Like it takes him by surprise.
I see with him that who the stinger is matters quite a bit.
That's
He
true.
doesn't care about the opinion of many, many people,
That's
but
true.
there's certain people whose opinion he really does value, and that stings.
I guess I'm thinking about Louisa.
Mhm. And Aunt Joan.
Yeah. Yes. But you're
Yeah.
absolutely right about that. So to go on, at the beginning, I don't see right away that Louisa has any self-awareness. I kind of come on hard about, you know, that Martin is, to me at first seems like he's reflecting more, especially when you're right, when it comes to Louisa.
Mhm.
He is paying attention to how she responds to him. He
Mhm.
doesn't he doesn't like it. He doesn't like when he messes up
Mm,
with her.
correct, yeah. And that bothers him because there's a draw, right? There's chemistry.
Right. Let me just say too that so when we get to Peter, the child,
Yes.
there's a lot of breaking through that happens here. And I loved that they used him, the boy, this way, because he's in a couple of episodes, isn't he?
Mhm.
He's not just in the one. But it's kind of like Louisa has a kind of breakthrough moment here, in my opinion, in that there's this whole talking about clever versus polite. And she realizes that well, she sort of learns about Martin through Peter, right? That Peter
Mhm.
is saying he doesn't fit in and he's so logical. And then she's able to offer him compassion and say, you just need love. And she say, you just have to let people tease you. And then she realizes she's wrong too, and actually apologizes to
Mhm.
both. I think it's on the bench in the school. She
Mhm.
apologizes to both of them and
Oh,
also telling him to speak up for himself.
this cracks me up because you haven't seen the episode with Rob because it hasn't
No.
aired yet. Um, and he touched on some of these things, and I had always seen that, like, Peter Cronk and Doc Martin are peas in a pod, in a sense of, when Martin was young, he was the precocious, annoying, bored in school kid. Like, you can just see that that's the likely scenario, right? So you can draw the parallels. But I had and I did believe that Louisa was in essence kind of getting it a little bit about Martin from seeing Peter, but I hadn't drawn the conclusion that you're drawing and Rob had also drawn about how when they're sitting on the bench and she's kind of talking to Peter, I don't think she actually necessarily has a talking to Martin, but what she says to Peter applies in large part to Martin as well.
Right. Well, that may be the case, but there's a dawning on her that's going on at this point. There's a bit of softening. I guess we don't know how much she knows inside, right? I mean, she's a character and we don't know, but the way the show is written, it's helping us see that.
Mhm.
And we're sort of the stand-in for her too. Or
Right.
she's the stand-in
Yes.
for us. Then they go on. Oh, so somewhere along the way, I start to ponder a few things in terms of the culture. And because they're all very critical.
Mhm.
It's to me, it seems that they're pretty sarcastic and so I looked up about British humor and I know you know a lot more about this than I do. And then I looked up too, is sarcasm a form of affection? Kind of how they do that. Do you want to say a little bit more about that? Because I know you've thought about this a lot more. I mean, I can say more about it, but I think it's an important piece of interpreting their psychology and their relational functioning.
You probably have a better perspective of it, but it just made me chuckle because of my stories, I at least look into a lot of idioms and word choices and humor, and, like, I try to educate myself there, and I know I'm not getting it right, but at least
I
it's a
think you
little
do
closer. But
amazing.
yeah, but see, we don't know, right? I mean, you'd have to live there to know whether or not I'm anywhere in the neighborhood. But, I recently watched a video of insults that are actually friendly. And it's all about, like, you could use these words, but you better get your tone right, because if you use it this way, it's like you love this person and you're just having fun with them, but if you use it this way, you might get punched, right?
Well, so what I looked up because I thought how much of this is dysfunctional, right? Of the ways that people are and how much is of it is just cultural and even cultural to Cornwall,
Oh, interesting.
you know? So here's some of the things I found out. Of course, the dry, ironic wit is such a part of it. But what they said is that it's what's not said that sometimes is the humor and the situational things and the verbal play. So there's a lot of, they do a great job in the show, I think, of this, of facial expressions, you know, the showing versus the telling. You're left with
Mhm.
the situation, the observing the absurd, which is what goes on so much, and I think what tickles me as the audience. Some of it feels very cringeworthy, right? Like, you don't say that to your partner or your children, you don't talk that way. Even Louisa uses this, you know, "Don't be
Right.
stupid." I'm kinda like, "Who are you you know, here you're so critical of Martin, but you're saying all these things too." So
It makes me wonder how much we missed, not having the same culture. I mean, we have the same basic language, right? We've done our thing with it. I'm sure the English are like, it's yeah, yeah, we have the language and you guys mess it up. But how much we miss because we don't know, the culture and the senses of humor, and we don't have that subtlety.
I can see that, and what they were saying too is, that sarcasm can be a love language. This is what you were saying earlier on, like, depending on the
Mhm,
context. I've always felt coming from I mean, I'm not just Italian, but coming from more of an Italian cultural family and my husband, that sarcasm is absolutely a love language.
mhm.
And it's a way of softening and building like what it was saying when I looked up about this was that you have to know somebody or it's a way of getting to know someone to use the sarcasm. So in terms of the town itself, this goes back to the softening and the deepening of the relationship is that they're hurling insults at him all the time. And at a certain point, it becomes love and affection,
Yes, yes, I'm sure.
tolerance. I mean, I think from what I understand too, that there's a lot of tolerance going on. Like in British humor, there's a lot of deprecating that can go on. And it's kind of this backhand affection. You
I
don't agree?
hesitate. I just hesitate to, like, I'm gonna call it Brit-splain, right? Like
Yeah.
mansplaining, like I don't know, right? But
Yeah,
I look at the bevy girls, right? The girls who are constantly just telling him he's a tosser, and I don't feel like it's ever like good spirited, in 10 seasons. But I do think that, like, you know, we're trying to focus on seasons 1 through 3 here, but I certainly people like Bert and Al, and when you get teased later on, it's a loving tease. It's not a you're a, you're an arse tease, right? Which it can be at the beginning.
Yeah, maybe I'm more in love with them, so I'm saying this. I'm falling in love with these characters, even though they're at the same time very unlikable.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've definitely fallen in love with these characters in the sense that, like, I should get a kickback for all the people I said should watch this show.
So you're right. I hear what you're saying about not making generalizations. In some ways, I feel like they could be using humor a lot more. Like, there's not the one thing. So going back to Louisa and Martin, at a certain point, she says, I don't know what episode it is, but she says, "Why is every conversation combative?"
And why must it always be like this?
Right. Now, in therapy speak, we would say that's the central issue.
Is it a perception thing? Like she's perceiving it to be combative and because he doesn't get it, right? He doesn't seem to get that it's combative.
He doesn't say that it is, but I think, don't you think he knows it? They're not,
I think
they're
he
not
knows it.
working.
I think in seasons 1 through 3, he may not realize it just because I remember, is it sometime in season 2, she's just trying to explain something to him and he's just like, I don't understand much of what you say.
Oh, I love that. That's when they're drinking at the
But I think it's before they went to drink, right? I think it might be, does it take place like right before they go up to the surgery and start?
but that's the scene, right, where he says that. He's
Yeah,
honest.
the setup is like, I must admit that I just don't understand what you're saying most of the time.
I think what I'm saying is not that they are aware of it, but that the central issue that has to be figured out in their relationship or any relationship, if this was a real relationship, is why? Why? That's a good question.
Mhm.
Whether or not he recognizes it or not, why is that going on?
Yeah, and the thing is he's there is combat. I'm not gonna say he's combative, but there is combat in almost every interaction that he has because he's got this chip on his shoulder and he's angry that he's not the surgeon anymore and he's now this GP in this small village and he comes in with this attitude. So there's a lot of conflict with pretty much everybody, especially when they ignore medical advice, but it bothers him that it's combative with Louisa, but it doesn't really bother him when it's combative with other people.
I agree with that. I think for myself, in terms of just the two of them, this is where I don't think Louisa is owning that she is also combative. And
I
she
don't think she realizes it for a long time.
no, I don't know if she will realize it, but she's also combative with others. This idea that she knows the right way to be. They're not the same. I mean, she definitely has more empathy and social skills, but she starts to, I think this episodes with Peter and even her starting seeing how the village is treating him. Like she doesn't want Martin to be hurt.
Mhm.
And I think that's what I mean by the empathy too. What you're saying is that Martin doesn't want to hurt Louisa. Even though he is hurting her, he doesn't want to hurt her.
Mhm. Yeah. I
There's there's a lot of misunderstanding going on. So when she says, "Why is every conversation combative?" She's trying to have a conversation about this, is what you're saying.
yeah. And yeah, and he's just boggled.
Right.
His communication skills are so damaged.
Right. I don't know if he had was a different person, would he be so good at medicine, at zeroing in, tuning out the people part? But then when he's practicing medicine, he's an amazing counselor. He deal with some really thorny medical issues and psychiatric issues, and he's excellent, I think, at that. So now let me go back to this question though. For me, like if I had my therapist said, why is every conversation combative? What I would start to think about is why is that and what needs to change? Like where would the point of intervention be? What would you do about that? So that's one thing, and what I was just thinking about too, along with that, is that their boundaries are very blurry, or they have multiple relationships going on, right? So, which happens in a small town and with professionals, but are they patient and doctor? Are they headmistress or, teacher and doctor? Are they dating? Are they interested in each other as a man and a woman? And so I think part of the confusion has to do with that too, is like what their roles are.
Yes.
What do you think
Yeah,
about?
because when you think about it, like when Martin's in the schoolyard, he'll come up and be like, Louisa, right? So that's just the man and woman. And
Oh, right.
when we're here, would you call me Miss Glasson? So she's establishing, no, in this scenario, this is our relationship.
And
Right.
he marches in. They both kind of march into each other's space.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
I
She
think,
she
like,
pops in on him in the office sometimes, just I guess when he's told Mark that he doesn't want to be his best man,
yes,
Louisa just barges in like, you can't do that.
they start to have a relationship on all these different levels. And to going back to what I was saying about the village being helping their relationship. So because they have such significant roles in the village,
Hmm.
and it's part of the story too, they wind up showing up at a lot of the crises together.
Hmm.
It's their joint knowledge and even the knowledge of the village, because the whole scene where, what's the park ranger's name?
Stuart.
Stuart and Anthony, and everybody's out at night and they see he's really psychotic, that without the knowledge, the history of the medical knowledge of the community, Martin can't practice medicine as well. Now, of course, he's not going to say that because, he's the doctor and he condescends to them all, but he needs their knowledge. You know,
Right.
it goes from Aunt Joan to really all of them. And so I
Hmm.
start to see that they're now working as a team, maybe not so well in their personal relationship, but they're a team when it comes to taking care of the village.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say that to your point about not knowing the history of things, you've got, I believe it's Elaine, the receptionist. Martin's on his way out to see Stuart. And Elaine's like, I didn't tell you, Doc, about, right? So it's like Elaine has information. Obviously, Dr. Sim kept crappy notes. I mean, those little cards always seem to be something of a mess. And then when they're outside watching Stuart whack all the feeders and all, people in the village, just, random villages have to give him his medicine. Doc Sim always gave his medicine. We're used to Anthony. Anthony's been around forever, right? So everybody knows, and Martin complains all the time. Everybody here knows everybody else's business, right? And I think Louisa tries to present that as a blessing and a curse. Martin just sees the curse, but she sees it as the blessing.
And that the village serves as a model. This is what I was saying too before, that they have to tolerate each other. Going back to the very beginning, the
Hmm.
beauty and the flaws.
Yeah, and at the end of I think it might be at the end of the first season, but it's certainly in the first season where Martin's gonna leave. He's had a week. It's been horrible. He's getting ready to leave, and Bert comes in and just says, "Can you see a couple of patients?" And he's basically got the entire town. And he says, the way I see it, you need patients and we need a doctor. We don't all have to love each other.
And then that's where he also goes out, is it? Because I was going to say this earlier, and chops the sign down, or he's doing
Yes.
it more defiantly.
Hmm.
But I think that's the bookend to the beginning when they're running him off the road and he defiantly says, I'm not going, at the end here, I'm not going and I'm staying. Um, and yes, I mean, he's loved. He was always loved. We learn this when he comes around to his background, that he was loved for being a doctor.
Yes, and that's pretty much it.
Loved is a strong word. Approved of, had value.
Accepted in that role.
Yes.
Appreciated in that role for multiple reasons. There's he's a good doctor, and there's I'm too lazy to go to Delabole or to Wadebridge.
Right.
Right.
And so I start to see that the couple.
I'm going to interrupt you. I should say it's really not lazy though, because you know, if your life is that you have to take a bus to get to the doctor, and it takes forever to get there, and the bus is maybe not the most reliable things. It's a hassle, right?
Yeah. And also that's why they've been taking care of things via each other and the pharmacist. So going to then we get some background, right? About, I forget what order it is. If we learn about Luisa's father before we learn about Martin's family, I don't know what order. I forget what order it comes in.
I think
But
Martin's parents come in, I think it's in season 2. It's in season 2 before episode 9, which is the Christmas episode where we meet Terry Glasson. So we at least meet Martin's parents before we meet Terry Glasson.
well, so Luisa's father, we get a glimpse. Do we ever learn what happens to Luisa's mother? Did I miss it somewhere along the way?
I'm not sure if we do know, I mean, spoiler alert to anybody who's listening, we know that she ran off to Spain. She ran off to Spain.
So going back to the attachment style, Luisa has, this abandonment, right? She's been abandoned. Her parents have not been reliable. She's under some illusions about her father before she learns more about him. So with this respect, I can understand why she is so functional in a way. She's had to be so independent and
Yeah.
also so moral, and why she likes Martin. You know, somewhere, I think it may even be the episode before or soon, she tells Martin, "You do 20 things that are crap, but you're Martin through and through."
Yeah, a stick of rock. I had to look that up. A stick of rock is a type of candy that gets sold at, like, festivals, venues, whatever. And it might have an image or a sentence or something like that on it that no matter how much you let it dissolve, you can see that all the way through it.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I always think of, like, rock candy. I thought she was talking about rock candy, which here in the US is just like a conglomeration of
sugar.
sugar, and there's no image or anything in it. But so I had to look that up. Like, what does that even mean?
So this is very appealing to her. And going back to what I said at the very beginning about
Yes,
couples
the
and
constancy is appealing, right? The constancy, not the 20 things are crap. That's where my, for my
the but that is so healing for her,
right.
that he's so reliable. And so we start to understand that, okay, there's flaws, or she's starting to realize that there's flaws here. They're maddening to her, but there's something very essential about him for her.
Hmm.
And to go back to what I said about the relationships being the playground for learning, that might not be so fun. But she's starting to, if you look at her trauma of attachment, where she didn't have a reliable parent and she had to be the one that was so reliable. Here she's attracted to someone, so there's a healing component to that. But he's also frustrating at the same time because he does leave her in these little ways when he has this criticism, or he's combative, or he doesn't have the emotional intelligence yet to realize that he's leaving her in all these little moments. And that's what's hurting her so much.
Yeah, and those moments, I don't think he would necessarily think of them as he's leaving her. And I believe he's panicking, and he's rolling back to what he knows best, which is medicine. So when she's got the bad breath, it's, let me diagnose why that might be the case. And when he kisses her in the shrubbery after the concert, he has to comment on the smell of the perfume. And that
That's an
is, I guess he's,
excellent observation.
but that's not medical, that one. When I think about it, that one, he's just trying to make a comment there, because I don't think he's put off by her. He's just trying to demonstrate his knowledge.
But you're saying that that's because he's awkward and he doesn't have the skill set to be eloquent or poised or go with the discomfort in some other way, that he reverts back to this way that he can cope with his own anxiety.
Hmm.
But then it's so misattuned.
Right. And it's so offensive to somebody like Louisa. And really, I don't know. I'd probably I'd probably be put off. Actually, no, like I'm a lot more easygoing than Louisa, I think.
Well, that's what I mean. Like she doesn't laugh very much about this either. I mean,
Yeah.
she takes it very seriously each time.
Yeah. If somebody told me, you have your breath is bad in medical terms or whatever, I think I would have just sort of popped back with, well, we just spent the night with no toothbrush and drinking hospital coffee. What do you expect?
Which she
Yours
does
isn't
say.
exactly, smelling like honey either.
Right. Right. And she, she does say that. She does all of that, but then she stomps off and she doesn't really give him much grace.
No.
That's it. So I guess that's what.
She kicks him out of the cab, makes him walk
Yeah.
home,
Yep.
and breaks up with him over the urine-like smell of her
Yes.
perfume.
Yes. That's what I mean. There's not a she's not yet mature enough. We'll see if that happens. Yet mature enough to kind of factor that in when when she says the 20 things that are crap. Again, going back to my experience with relational counseling, I would often say to people like, these are the foibles of the person you're with. Everyone has foibles, and you could look upon it as gratitude that you have someone because their foibles are part of who they are. They might be maddening, but everyone has something.
Mhm.
But
That
I
is
think
absolutely true.
they're
Speaking
both.
from personal experience, I have many foibles.
Me too. But I think they're both so hurt, like, somewhere along the way, I think I used this word earlier, hurt people,
Mhm.
or don't have as much capacity yet. Because that's the other thing in terms of what you're seeing over time is that the capacity of everybody on the show is growing, right? They're all growing. Alan, his dad are growing. Go ahead. What were you
Do you
gonna
ever
say?
see I'm trying to think if I can recall a scenario where Martin seems to be intentionally hurting Louisa. And off the top of my head, I can't come up with one.
I think that's what I mean by his being stung is that he doesn't understand. It's not in his heart to hurt people. Even though he does all the time, as you're pointing out with the village, he's combative, he's dismissive, he's judgmental. I don't know that that's the same as mean-spirited. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe he
I mean,
just
I
hit.
think he's got it in his heart to hurt people. Like, he doesn't mind in the least bit being insulting. And what was I looking at? Just trying to think of some examples off the top of my head. Oh, yeah, with Terry Glasson, when he's got Jonathan in the office and trying to get him to just get his lithium. Terry's just saying, just give him the pills. You're going to give them to him eventually. I'm just trying to save you time. And Martin says something along the lines of, you don't give me advice on how to be a doctor, and I won't give you advice on how to be an absentee parent. That was meant to, you know, zing him. You don't agree?
We can probably have another conversation about this because you and I have privately had conversations about like Martin's anger and his aggression and how it plays out. Because I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing at all. But I think that I'm always aware of the wounded person inside
Hmm.
that's behaving that way, like the little Peter that's in him.
And he is, in essence, he's kind of defending Louisa here.
Yeah, yes. He's very loyal to the
Hmm.
people he wants to be loyal to. He's loyal to the practice of medicine.
Look at what he does for Aunt Joan. I mean, he sells his flat in London to get his father off her back, and yet he doesn't want her to know about it. She's my family. She shouldn't have to be grateful.
So let me ask you a question. So even though he is all the things that we're saying, and you particularly are reminding me of how he can be, why are people loving him? Why is the audience?
Why does the audience?
Yeah, why are we falling in love with him?
I personally see a lot of myself in Martin and a little of myself in Louisa. And so, just from a personal perspective, I love these characters because I see things in Martin that I don't like about myself, and I see things in Martin I do like about myself, and I see my husband, Chris, you know him. I see things about Martin in Chris. I see maybe a little like relationship wise between these two people. I just see a lot of things in my own human interactions. And it might go back to the fact that we all have foibles, we all have flaws, we all have beauty. We have all of this stuff. But I'm a very technical person. My husband's a very technical person, but I'm the sociable, emotional one. He's far more reserved, although he's very jovial. He's not at all stern, but he's he's come out with things like somebody had a new baby, and he'll probably make me edit this out, but he says, "My, what a big tongue he has."
No, that's very Martin.
And that's what I mean. Like that's such a Martin thing for him to say, but that's what my husband will just have no idea that that may not be
Right. But that's
like.
not mean-spirited.
It's
He's
not mean
he's
spirited. It's just he'll come out
observing,
with that.
and he's just observing. I often say that we can't have empathy for other people if we don't have it for ourselves. And what I mean by that is if we're in denial about our own pain and we don't feel that for ourselves, we don't
Hmm.
feel that hurt, we won't perceive it in other people. So he doesn't, well, we get a glimpse of what happened to him when his father and mother come along.
Well, how would you describe his mother, who is played
Oh
by
my
Claire
God, so
Bloom?
narcissistic.
I wondered if she was like a classic
Oh
narcissist.
my God, she's awful.
Yeah.
I mean, what she says to him, I wrote it down.
So well played too. I mean, from an actress and an
Oh my
acting
God,
perspective.
happy before you arrived. I was with your father, sexual, handsome. You came along. And then a mother is not a woman. I was a deflated balloon. I put you in boarding school. You were needy, bullied, wetting the bed.
Hmm.
So this is confirms what I'm saying is that like, why is he so seemingly unempathic? And here you have a mother who had none for him. He
Hmm.
didn't even exist. His needs were only annoying to her.
Yeah. Yeah. He certainly didn't have good role models. Then he's thrown just into a boarding school scenario, but you could see how a kid would get potentially bullied and not see the best of the world in many different ways as a youngster when he's very impressionable. And also maybe just say, okay, people are terrible and I don't need people. I'm going to just be my own little world. And, I am a rock. I am an island.
And be the best. I think that when one is the best, then they're simultaneously feel safe, but then the fear is if they're not the best, what will happen?
Hmm.
But I think that to go back to the whole question with them, why are they so combative or how they're treating other people is that neither of those characters at the very beginning have the insight about themselves. This goes back to the relationship with themselves that to start to put together, for example, what even you said about Martin's observation to Terry Glasson about being absentee. Like he starts to see that, and then we see what comes forth from his own mother. And
Hmm.
so the similarity again for them is that they had these absent parents, and there's becomes an awareness of themselves in that, right? And then
Hmm.
they can see it in the other person, have compassion and empathy in each other.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, I appreciate your time. I thought this was really an interesting conversation. I hope the watchers will enjoy it and like and subscribe the podcast. And
Thanks for having me.
my pleasure. And we'll look forward to more episodes with Lisa on the psychology of Portwenn.
Okay, thanks, Chesla.
Thank you. Take care.